Welcome to episode 15, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of Construction Dream Team, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn how to build your construction dream team based on OPE, other people's experiences. The shortest way to success is to learn from others who have been there and done that. If you want to receive Construction Dream Team on your phone automatically each week, please head on over to constructiondreamteam.com, iTunes or Stitcher, and subscribe. We'd love a 5-star rating. This gets us higher visibility in the search engines, making it easier for Construction Nation to find us. I am very excited to have our guest today. Rick Del Monte is Chief Design Officer and Managing Director of the Beck Group. He works out of Dallas. Hi, y'all.
Good morning. How are you doing, Sue?
I'm great. Thank you, Rick, so much for joining us today. Please tell us a bit about your journey of what it's taken and what the path has been for you to become the Chief Design Officer and Managing Director at the Beck Group.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm an architect by training. I did undergraduate at Ohio State. I have a Master of Architecture out of Clemson University, worked for 4 years, and then decided to go back for a second master's degree. So I went back to Columbia and got a Master of Science in Architecture and Building Design there. Went to work for one of my professors, Bill Pedersen. And so this was a firm, KPF, Cohn Pedersen Fox in New York. So I spent 9 years doing high-rise buildings out of New York for this firm, working for my professor. And what ended up happening was family. So at some point, we'd had one daughter and decided to have another one a couple years later and ended up having identical twin boys. And so at that point, I have to say my dream of high rises and all that was I decided to shelve that and focus on family. And so we moved to Dallas and joined a small office here, 17 people. And we did mostly some prototype movie theaters and some other little things. And we said, okay, we're gonna build a firm. And the guy I joined was a good friend, very talented guy whose skills kind of complemented me. So we began building this firm. I have to say, change is very hard. There were 17 people and 15 of them left within 2 years. They didn't buy into the vision. They didn't buy into the vision at all. And so I started hiring from day one and began building up the staff little by little. And probably the most meaningful thing was when I was down here in New York, I had huge budgets. I could build study models. I could do everything I wanted to create designs. Here I am in Dallas pursuing tiny little projects. And I realized I don't have the time to really create the level of design I want. And so I began learning computer tools. So 3D design tools, one in particular called Formsy, I started in 93. So by 95, 96, all our design in the office was completely three-dimensional renderings, everything. We were one of the first firms in the country to really push this. And I remember I did our website. And at that time, if you went to Yahoo, there were maybe 50 or 60 firms in the world that had a website because you'd go to Yahoo, which was the only search engine back then. And that became instrumental.
So let me jump in just a second and drill on this a little bit because I think it's so fascinating. So you have 17 people on your team. And 15 of them leave because they don't get the vision. What was the vision? Is it this what you did with technology to be more a leading edge? What was the vision?
So the group overall, they were working on these prototype movie theaters. Probably it was 80% of our work, which of course is frightening. One client, 80% of our work. And I said, I want us to be a design firm. I want us to do a broad range of projects. I want us to just really diversify. And what I got were these people whose self-worth was based on how good they were at doing these prototype movie theaters. And their question is, why do we have to diversify? Why do we have to become a design firm? What's wrong with what we're doing now?
Yeah, I think that's such a fascinating thing. I think Construction Nation, listen to this. You have to create your dream team. Sometimes that means you have to lose people, maybe a lot of people, in order to actually have the dream. So I think it's such an important lesson. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's funny. The first guy I hired is still with me, Javier, and Javier's been with me for 26 years. And so, yeah, the people that we hired, and I have to say, once the last person left out of that group, it was as though the clouds parted and the sun shined. And suddenly everybody was on board. And when we would have office meetings, instead of the discussion being, why do we need to change? the discussion would be more like, well, if we want to be this kind of firm, shouldn't we be doing this? Or wouldn't it be better if we did that? So that's a very different discussion, trying to figure out how do you accomplish your mission better rather than asking, why do we want this mission? Why can't we have a different mission?
Yes. Clear vision and mission alignment and commitment. Yeah, that's awesome. So things have evolved since then. So tell us a bit about the Beck Group, kind of how you're structured, how large are you, how did you kind of become the Beck Group, et cetera?
So anyway, so we've done a lot in technology, and then in the meantime, the Beck Group, Peter Beck, who's a third generation CEO of the company, had decided that the industry was broken. There was a lack of coordination. We just had a disastrous job in Philadelphia. And he went out and said, bought this software and began to develop internal software. It was based on Sonata, one of the first BIM programs in the world out of England, and realized at a certain point that if you don't have architects in-house, you can't use your own tool. So they began talking to different people. And I remember we were invited to have breakfast. And so we were asked, is your firm for sale? It was from one of the other partners. And of course, the answer is if the price is right, of course, anything is for sale. But we went out and had breakfast with Peter Beck, and it was really our joint vision of what technology can do and how you try and fix this industry that kind of set us off. We're both the same age. We're both in our early 40s, and we wanted to see what we could do. The kind of motto of Beck at that time was revolutionize the industry, change our future. And we had about 50 people, 50 architects. We'd grown pretty fast and decided that, we were going to bet the farm that an integrated process would help us revolutionize this industry. And so we jumped in. So that was November of 99. So it's going on 20 years since we did that. And so right now, I think we're about 180 architects, 6 offices in the U.S. plus Mexico City. We are $1.3 billion in construction volume. And we are somewhere in the range of 40 to 50% integrated volume projects that we do, Beck construction, Beck design. And then maybe half of our volume, we build for other people and we go out in the marketplace and we compete as architects with other people.
That's exciting. So what do you think at this point is kind of your sweet spot for projects? And what's your competitive advantage?
So, obviously integration is our competitive advantage. And I say that because we do all these projects together, we can invest in training, tools, other things that I think other groups that are maybe coming together for 1 or 2 or 3 projects at a time and then going apart don't quite have the ability to invest in. And then for us, our sweet spot is probably about $15 million to about $120 million projects on the integrated side. It's really based, our architecture group is a little smaller, our construction group, and some of our offices have capabilities of, that's about the limit. Though right now, for example, in Atlanta, we're doing I think it's about a $220 million retail mall conversion project that is completely integrated. So we've gotten some really significant projects. University campus in Mexico, which in US dollars would be equivalent to about $180 million. So we've done some larger ones, but I would say about 15 to 120 is really our sweet spot.
So tell us more. I hear all the time in the industry people using the word integration, and pretty much everyone I talk to has a different definition of what it is. So tell us, in your frame of mind and your competitive advantage, what does integration mean to you as the Beck Group?
Well, I guess for us, integration means when we work together internally as architects and contractors to do a job. And so I remember we were using integration back in 99. Now it's become kind of ubiquitous. But like I said, for us, it is kind of bringing the team together early. If you walk our office, for us, the integrated process, there's no departments in our floor here. We all sit together. So it's purely project-based seating. So if you walk by a team that's designing a project, the estimator, the project manager, the architecture team are all there. If you go to a job site, there are architects sitting in that job site. These are kind of the fundamentals that we've all agreed to, that every job has to follow some basic fundamentals in order to be what we consider a true integrated project. So for us, it's either integrated or what we call third party, where we're working with outside teams. And we certainly do a lot of that. And, I think it's actually pretty beneficial to not just do internal projects because, we learn from some of the other architects, we learn from some of the other contractors we work with. So we constantly have eyes on the industry as to what's happening in other areas of the industry.
That's great. And also gives you a chance to build that dream team that goes with you wherever you go, even though it may have different parts and pieces at different times. You can have one culture, one process, one concept. I would think owners love that. So I know that you're a leader in the industry, and I know that you're a leader in your company. So as a leader, what do you feel are your greatest strengths?
Yeah, that's an interesting. We talked earlier. I think one of the things is, I think people look to a leader when they come to a company and say, okay, does this group, is there a vision here, right? Is there some direction, some idea, something that where these individuals want to take the company? And that allows people to decide, I believe in that vision or I don't. But then I guess personally, part of this is, and as I've recognized, is having the drive and ambition to figure out how to accomplish that vision. When I joined Beck, and Beck is a very hierarchical company, or had been. It's more relaxed now, but it was very much a report to structure. Who do you report to? And you were, all this. And I had to drive tremendous change into this company because as I came in, I looked at everything from our logo, our marketing materials, our office space. We looked like a contractor. And I was saying, I can't sell design services, integrated services out of a firm that looks like this. So I set about redesigning everything, the website, the business cards. Like I said, I did the office space, all of these things that I would change in the company to get it moving forward. And really, it was, the force of your will and personality to get people to move, to change, to kind of buy into what you're trying to accomplish within the office. And I remember one of the young architects came and he brought some marketing materials, which are truly awful, and said, Rick, how can you let this happen? We've got to fix this. And I remember looking at him. This is about 3 months into the merger. And I said, I have angered enough people this month. I have used up my quota of kind of social capital. I'll get to that next month, maybe the month after. Eventually I'll get there, but you can only upset so many people in terms of pushing change forward into the organization. But eventually it's amazing now to look at the company and realize the transformation that happened to it.
That's exciting. And also, I'm sure that the team got excited as they saw more, even though while they could absorb it, as much as they could absorb at a time, but continuing as they saw more things happening and transformation occurring. So possibilities grew. That's exciting. So I understand that you are the chair of the Design Build Institute of America Design Quality Initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about the initiative?
Yeah, so DBI has been very successful, incredible growth in the last few years, and it is a very rational and great process for kind of moving forward. But I think one of the points of resistance that we're finding is that we're predominantly construction people. So I was saying that at the last DBI conference, I was at the practitioners forum. So the owners are separate, and DBI has a large owner component. But among the practitioners, it was something like 80% were contractors and only about 12% were architects and the rest were engineers. And so in some way, we have gotten a reputation among a lot of the architecture profession of not being very good design. That if you go design build, it's going to be contractor driven. It's not going to be high quality. And so one of the initiatives and one of the reasons why we've taken this on is because we feel it's important to change that, change the perception and change the reality, frankly, because sometimes it is not the highest quality. So we have been working hard to try to define design quality, to try to integrate it into all the awards programs, to try and figure out how it becomes part of the fabric of DBIA in such a way that architects will embrace design build, I think, as much as the construction side has.
So that's really interesting that there's some resistance there. So maybe we dive in a little bit and talk about the definition of design quality. If an initiative were to be extremely successful, what would that kind of look like?
Well, and I think that's been one of the real challenges where we've had a stumbling block is trying to put together a paper that really defines it, because you're defining a quality rather than, the qualitative issue rather than a quantitative issue. And those are always more difficult. It has been in a narrow definition to provide what the owner perceives to be excellence in design and what they're looking for the project. Again, I tend to have a little broader definition when I look at a project. Number one has to be, yes, the owner, it meets its criteria. It meets its criteria for design excellence. But number two, for me, it has to also meet the criteria of the users of the building or the facility for design excellence. Because oftentimes the people that are represent the owner's point of view are not the users of the building, and there can often be disagreements there. And then finally, how does this building contribute to the community in the world at large, i.e., sustainability, use of energy? There are other sort of community values. And I think if a building's really going to be a valuable building, it has to operate in all three of those sides of it. And, the thing that I would say is, one of the really critical elements, one of the ones that we've been focusing on is that the DBI includes owners. And I think owners are the ones that really have a great deal to do with defining whether they're going to get design excellence, because the really enlightened owners begin focusing on design excellence from the first proposal sent out. If design excellence is not a very high percentage of the score in selecting a team, then the odds of getting a really good design team and getting a good design are probably not great.
That's probably been my perception as well. The owner is going to drive that, even though they sometimes don't realize it.
Yes.
So this integrated approach sounds phenomenal, and having high quality sounds like, of course, what we want. And you said there was resistance. Where specifically are you seeing the resistance come from, beside me in the architectural field?
It's been interesting because I think the smaller firms, and there really is a split in the architectural profession, because I think like 90 or 95% of the firms in the country are under 5 people. And however, when you look at the overall population, it's like 50% of the architects work for that small 5% of large firms, and about 50% work for the small ones. And some of the smaller ones, I think, have gotten themselves into design build relationship with contractors in which, frankly, they're completely controlled and subservient to the construction team, and often not even allowed to kind of talk to the owner. So I think what has surprised us is in the group, I've worked in the AIA Project Delivery Knowledge Community, which is a group that represents design build there. And we were shocked to find that there's a group that's fighting design build at another part of the AIA. And when we talked to them, it tended to be predominantly small firms that, again, feel like they were not treated well. The sophisticated larger firms tend to know how to find a partner that will respect them. They tend to know how to deal with liability issues. And when they put these criteria together, they tend to have a little more success. But it's some of the smaller, more naive firms that, frankly, design build has not been good to them.
So your advice to them, I hear, be careful what partner you have, and liability, anything, actions they could take around that. And the other thing that's coming to my mind is that, I think they will believe this, is this because they're small that they're being taken advantage of?
Well, I think that, yes, for a lot of the small firms, they have less power, less stroke, and less financial resources. And so, yes, I think it has a little bit to do with that. But, one of the guys that we do a design excellence and design build presentation that we've done at these things. And Greg Gadez, who is head of design build for Hensel Phelps, he has these great slides where he says, when people complain to me, well, my contracting partner doesn't care about design, his answer is, who picked your contracting partner? And then it goes on and on. My contracting partner is, holding me to this higher level of liability. He's going, who picked your contracting partner? So at some point, I think you need to define, we've talked about this before, Sue, but when you are in a design build relationship as an architect, you have a direct contractual relationship with a contractor. So the protection that it gives you when you're contracted to the owner and the contractor then has to go through the owner to get to you for financial loss is gone. And so at the start of all these projects, you'd better define what the design contingency is, who controls it, what's an acceptable level of errors and emissions before the contractor will come after you. I think you have to have a lot of very frank conversations with the contractor to really make sure that he cares about the same things you care about, and that liability-wise, he's willing to protect you and work as a good team player with you.
So how does the role of the architect in this, particularly a smaller firm, play out with the owner? Because I think that's where I hear a lot of kind of grumbling too, is that the architect feels like they have arm's length away from the owner and they're trying to create a design for the owner to meet expectations.
I can't imagine, Sue, how you would really do a design if you were not in direct contact with the owner. And I think that what we're seeing now in, progressive design build, in which a team is picked by qualifications, so that the owner, rather than looking at 3 cooked designs and prices and picking one, actually gets to be part of the process of cooking up the design and working in the kitchen. Those are really predicated on direct contact between the owner and the contractor, and owner and the architect. And without that, I am not sure how you would ever communicate your true design, the design intent, the design desire that the owner wants out of the project moving forward. So a lot of this also has to fall. I'm not pointing the finger at our construction partners, because if the owner, frankly, doesn't care and the only criteria that they have is price and not value, then it's going to be very difficult for the architect to make a case that, in fact, he needs to be part of the discussions and he needs to be able to push the owner forward.
Yes. So again, I think you're very wise to tell the firms to really be concerned about who's your partners, and it includes the owner, it sounds like, too, like what jobs you're going out for.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, though, is this is even internal. So one of the things we would run into problems is if the teams, when we bring a team together, if our expectations, let's say we do a profit plan, how do we plan to make money on the job? If we are not on the same page on how to make profit, even internally within the same company, we start to have tension and problems within the team. So we always sit down and try to, write down, okay, here's the contingencies we have, here's the money we have, here's the architectural fee, here's our expectations. And before we ever begin a job, make sure that we're in alignment on those, because if you're not, you're just going to run into problems.
Yeah, that sounds like a truth that's been hard learned. So I'm sure not everything has always been hunky-dory on every project or every initiative that you've been involved with. Take us back to your biggest challenge that you've ever faced in your career, and that very worst moment that you've faced. What was that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I worked with a developer, became a friend, this gentleman, John Chagru, and John and he had bought a really spectacular site in downtown Dallas, next to what was to be a future museum. And I did the preliminary design for a high-rise building in downtown, sort of a dream project. Worked on that for, I want to say, 6 or 7 years, pitching it. We had renderings, we'd go to lenders, I'd make a pitch with John. And finally, after 6 or 7 years, we get a lender. It turned out to be the Policeman and Firemen's Fund here in town, the pension fund, that would finance the project. And we start to move forward with this wonderful project. And he has 2 partners that have been silent up to that point who suddenly come in and they're part of the team. And they have an interior architect that they're bringing along. And so my relationship with John is great, but I don't know these 2 gentlemen and they don't know me and they don't trust me. And so we proceed to develop this building. And the design that I had done that actually gained the financing forward gets attacked little by little. And so I had worked on that job for 6 months. And the building progressively got worse. And I finally reached the end of design development after 6 months. And I just looked at this building and thought, I'm going to be embarrassed to build this. And I don't want our name on this project. And I went through a tremendous amount of angst, because at the time it was the largest commission we'd gotten here in Dallas. And so I called Peter Beck and my partner, and we chatted. And, he said, if you don't feel good about this, we need to step away and turn over the commission. And I called John and we left as friends, but I said, you need to find another architect. I don't think I'm the one that you need for this project. He ended up hiring went through 2 more firms before he finally found another firm that they could all agree on. And they put up a tower called Museum Tower here in town. And it's right next to the Nasher Sculpture Garden, which is a Renzo Piano world famous project. And this building, which is an all glass facade that they built, is reflecting light onto the garden, burning the garden, damaging the gallery. And it has been an incredible national controversy on this project. And the way that the finger pointing, the controversy, everything else I have just been one of those where at the time it was one of the most painful things I'd been through. But afterwards, I just am so happy that I walked away from that project when your instinct tells you this is not a good process. This is not a good project.
So the lesson learned, listen to your gut, huh?
Yes. Yes, when some of these projects go.
So what is the very best advice you've ever gotten?
This advice in particularly works for design architects. And, I had a professor in college who always told us, he said, take your work very seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And working in a profession full of people that take themselves way too seriously, it has always served me well in relationships with clients, with fellow workers, with everything else. Everybody knows how seriously I take the work, how passionate I am about it. But everybody also knows that I don't take myself that seriously. And I think it was a great piece of advice.
Probably good advice for every single person listening, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So we always like to ask our guests to share something that's been meaningful to you with Construction Nation. Could be a book, an article, link, podcast, paper. So I believe you have something to share.
Yeah, I was thinking about what books, when people are really trying to look at creativity and design and try to understand if that's not the side of the world that you come from. I would quote a book. It's called Creativity, Inc. And it was written by a gentleman named Ed Catmull. And he is the director and the guy who has joined Disney. But previous to joining Disney, he was with Pixar. So he was a gentleman that started Pixar, joined Disney, and how he went from this little creative group joining Disney, and how he transformed Disney into a creative organization, and how we pulled all these people together. And it really is a great book if you want to understand kind of a design mindset and how that works.
Excellent. We will leave a link to that book for Amazon in the notes from this episode. So anybody can just jump on over there at constructiondreamteam.com and find that book. That sounds very fun. So how can Construction Nation get a hold of you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, and actually now that you do, I'm trying to remember what my LinkedIn, I tell you what, I will put in my LinkedIn page and send it to you so you can post it.
We will do that.
But yes, I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably the easiest way to get hold of me.
And we'll post that right on the notes from this episode. So, what is your parting advice that listeners might be able to just put into play starting tomorrow?
This may sound funny because it's not directly related to work, but the one thing I would say, and I say to all the young people, is, this is really a changing economy, changing world. And I always tell people, take care of your health, take care of your finances. As we have to work longer hours, have to deal with more stress, I think that one of the great things that's helped me a lot is, diet, exercise, taking care of yourself. It has helped me kind of endure a lot of things. And I think that whatever changes come, if your health is good, if you're not in debt, if you're taking care of the things that you need to take care of in your personal life, I think you can cope with what comes at you. When you haven't, then you're going to have a very difficult time.
Yeah. Sounds like very wise words, because that stress makes it hard to have your dream, hard to be a visionary when you're stressed out.
Yeah.
I thank you so much, Rick, for being a guest on Construction Dream Team. I know this is going to be very helpful to many of the listeners and food for thought for many others. So Construction Nation, remember, dream teams don't just happen. They're built one step at a time. Why not send out this episode to your entire team? Let them learn more about the design perspective. And they can then help you to create your dream team. The faster you can build your construction dream team, the faster you can have your dream. So head on over to constructiondreamteam.com to sign up for our newsletter, and don't forget to subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, or you can listen right on constructiondreamteam.com. We have a contest going for take a picture of your team with our poster and get a free lunch photo contest. So if you dive into Construction Dream Team's poster, print it, take a picture, send it to me, and we will select one team, hopefully the most creative, that will win a free team lunch every single month. So get that picture and send it in. Send it to Sue at constructiondreamteam.com. Remember, Construction Dream Team drops every Monday morning at 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please join me next week when I interview another industry leader or expert so you can learn to create your construction dream team. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me, Rick, and being a part of this episode. And I will catch everyone next time.